Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of TV is Our Real Mom. I'm Dave,
I'm Katie.
and you are listening to our weekly Survivor recap podcast, in which we break down the latest episode of Survivor. And last night's episode was Survivor Kaoh Rong, episode 12. And was this a tier 1 episode?
Well, I wouldn't put it at tier 1, but it was.
No.
It was maybe tier 2.
Maybe, because it was a pretty interesting tribal council, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the scramble was kind of
confusing.
interesting.
Mhm.
The tribal was kind of interesting. But the outcome was, it's kind of funny how the outcome of it was so predictable, yet
Yeah, it had nothing to do with tribal council. I remember thinking at the tribal council when it was basically Michelle and Ty. Michelle, like, hammering him down and Ty being like, ah. And then it ended up being Jason, and it seemed disjointed or kind of jarring that was the result of that tribal council.
Yeah.
You know?
It was such an anticlimactic ending for Jason as a character. Just kind of,
and it was
he didn't even get to go out with
disappointing. He didn't talk much.
Yeah. But, I mean, he was funny. I thought he was funny in the tribal, just like his kind of douchey look on his face, like. But I mean, you know, I liked the way he acted in a way in that tribal council. It was entertaining. It was funny.
I mean, he seemed to know what was going to happen, and so he just was like resigned to his fate, I guess, and just wanted to let them kind of crumble from within, because he's out of the fray now, and they're left to tear each other apart now. So maybe that was funny. Maybe he'd already accepted his doom.
Yeah, I mean, if I was him, though, what was going on might have given me the impression that I had somewhat more of a chance. I don't know. I would have felt like maybe.
I don't know how. I mean, I don't know who he would have gotten to flip. I don't know why Ty told him that he was going to vote for Michelle. So I don't know why Jason didn't put his vote on Michelle. And then I suppose he did not know that Michelle would end up with 2 votes, because he didn't know that Ty had 2 votes. And he didn't know that he only needed 1 more person.
Yeah. Did anybody else vote for Michelle?
No, Ty voted for her twice.
Yeah, it was just
thereby proving that the advantage is useless, or just way too hard to play correctly.
It could be very useful if Ty is the type of player that can convince people to do what he wants. He obviously doesn't have that kind of power like Aubrey. You know, like Aubrey's a player who can convince you to do what she wants you to do by playing to what you want, which is kind of a rule of sales. It's a rule of social interaction, and getting what you want is try to play to what the other person wants. Make it sound like something they want to do. Aubrey gets that. Ty, obviously, this episode showed he totally sucks at that.
Yeah, he kind of showed that he made up his mind what he wanted, and he was trying to bend people to his will other than listening to what others wanted.
Yeah.
And even when they were in the water, like, talking about it, and he was like, please, Aubrey, please. And it was like, if you have to beg, it's probably not the right thing to do, Ty.
Yeah, there was actually a really funny confessional with him at that part where he's like, we hadn't come to the decision yet, but it's going to be Michelle. Basically, he's like, oh, we didn't get a chance to make a decision, but I made the decision. It's going to be Michelle.
Yeah.
And it very much illustrates what happened there, that he just was like, he went into this mode that we haven't really seen much from him of like, I'm a power player in Survivor. I get to be the guy I love to watch on TV, where I have all the power and everybody just does what I say. And he obviously doesn't get what's really going on, because no one listened to him. No one listened to him at all.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. Like, I'm trying to decide if he goes to the end with anyone other than Joe. Yeah. Can he actually win?
Yeah, I think we've been misled about how other people view him.
Because think of all the people on the jury. I guess Jason and Scott and Julia probably are not down with Ty. But other than that, I guess maybe everyone else is okay with him. So that's half the jury at this point, though. That's not good to have 3 votes against you.
Yeah, and it probably won't get much better.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So my question, though, is Aubrey had this decision to make. She said she thought that Michelle was the right way to go, getting rid of Michelle. And that's what Ty wanted, whereas Cydney wanted Jason gone. And she decided to stick with Cydney rather than Ty. So is that the right decision for Aubrey, do you think?
Oh boy. That's a really good question, but kind of tough one. What about Joe? How much does Joe play into this? Do you think maybe she's just siding more with Joe than Cydney? Like, because I know Joe was talking to Cydney, and they were like, or Joe was like, I want him gone. I'm tired of his shit. So, I mean, maybe Joe's playing.
Jason or Ty? He wanted Jason or Ty gone?
He wants Jason gone.
I thought he said he wanted Ty gone.
I don't think that's what he was talking. I think he was talking about Jason in that scene, but I could be wrong. I'd like to go back and watch it actually, because I took it as Jason, because I get I'm sure I heard this somewhere else, but I get the impression that Jason and Joe have really bad blood. Like, they just hate each other. And that's why she voted for Joe, because they just hate each other a lot. So I think that's why.
Seems fair.
Yeah. And you can kind of tell that by the conversation they had. Which reminds me, there's a really funny part there I liked where it just shows Jason and Joe's like, "What's up, man? What are you doing?" And Jason's like, "Oh, just hanging out with Mark." And you can see Mark sitting on the ground right there next to him. I thought that was
according to Jason's exit interview, Mark was actually pretty tight with Scott and Jason, more so than he was Ty. He said Ty was like Mark's father, and he would come when Ty called him, but he also just liked to hang out with like Scott and Jason. So they were like the brothers, whereas Ty was like the dad.
That's really funny. I like that.
So Scott and Jason spent a lot of time with Mark the chicken as well. But I don't know how we got on that topic when
I was saying that basically I thought maybe Aubrey was voting more with Joe than she was with Cydney.
Oh,
her
okay.
Her original alliance member.
I don't think that's how it works. I don't think Aubrey follows Joe. I think Joe follows Aubrey.
But I think she wants Joe to remain loyal to her,
Yeah, but I think she was making the call, and then she told Joe what to do. Because Joe ended up, voting Jason out.
Yeah.
But I feel like
and Joe and Cydney talked. They had their own little
I'm sure Aubrey was in on it as well. I don't think Joe talks to anyone and doesn't run back to Aubrey and tell her what happened.
Sure, yeah, I agree with that. And I think
it was clearly her decision to make, because she was struggling with it in that confessional, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, because if she sides with Ty, does Cydney actually go along with it? That, I mean, is it Aubrey's decision to make? If Aubrey says, "Hey, I'm going with Ty," does Cydney just follow suit?
No, but Joe does, and therefore Michelle's gone.
Because advantage, and you're right. They did talk about that in the very first scene of the episode. Those 3, hey, and you're right. So your original question was, does Aubrey, or was that the right decision for Aubrey? What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm not sure.
Well, I think if you're looking at the absolute bottom line, is that she kept Michelle around as opposed to keeping Jason around. When you're looking at it that way, I don't think it was the right move. I would have rather have kept Jason around than Michelle. But if you look at it as you're going to alienate either Ty or Cydney, I think Ty's the right person to alienate because he's already a target. And so you might as well just stick with Cydney, who it seems to be her tighter alliance and was with her before Tai was with her. So I think that's why it was such a tough decision for her, and why she ultimately just decided to stick with Cydney, even though she didn't like the results she was getting from sticking with Cydney.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I agree, but you do alienate Tai, who has an idol, so the idol makes him powerful. So you're alienating a powerful person.
Really, how powerful does it make him? Everybody knows he has it.
Makes him able to potentially get you out of the game if he can figure out who you vote for. Which, I mean, is he capable of doing that? Probably not, but yeah.
But if it turns out that he and Michelle team up like they're promoting next week, then why wouldn't they just put all their votes on Michelle, and then Tai plays his idol? I guess he could give it to her.
Yeah.
Then and then one of them gets voted out?
It could happen. But, I mean, we've seen Tai with his idols. He seems to be a little hesitant to use them, even on himself. So would he give it to Michelle? Probably not. So
you know what? Maybe Michelle, this would be hilarious if Michelle did this.
Mm-hmm.
If she let Tai give her the idol, and then she let him get voted out of the game. Then I'd be like, give it to Michelle. Let her win. Everyone's talking about Michelle being the winner, and it's looking more and more possible.
Yeah.
So, but if she did something ruthless like that, I'd be like, okay. She can win.
Yeah. I could dig that. That'd be cool. Because, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we wouldn't be saying that at all. We'd be like, no, not Tai, no.
I know, what happened? I'm like trying to understand when that happened. Like, I don't dislike Tai, but I don't find myself heartbroken at the thought of him getting voted out. Like, I don't understand when and where that happened.
I think there's been this slow shift for him towards away from his human character into more of a game bot, sort of like almost villainous. I don't know, like
but it was only 2 weeks ago where everybody was like, Tai is a fucking hero because of what he did.
Scott.
Excuse my language. Because he didn't give Scott his super idol or his half of the super idol. And so I don't understand. I mean, we were cheering for him so hard when that happened, and now we're just kind of like, ugh, Tai.
Yeah, well, this episode didn't help much. I think that's a big part of it.
True.
He got a real rough edit in this episode, making him look... I guess he's had plenty of moments throughout the season, though, that make him look kind of foolish. Like, he doesn't really fully understand what's going on. He can't explain himself. When he gets caught by something, or, he blunders, he gets flustered. Mm-hmm. These kinds of traits, it's tough to respect that. And not to mention his alliance with Scott and Jason. We can't forget about that. All these things kind of add up. And this episode really piled it on with making Tai look kind of like a jackass, basically. I mean, the whole tribal council with Michelle just going off on him. He couldn't get out of it. I mean, he couldn't talk his way out of it at all. He basically ends up saying, I don't know how you end up in this alliance. That's what he says about Michelle.
That's true. But doesn't it make him an appealing person to take to the end, though? Because he's like, how's he going to talk at a final tribal council? What's he going to say? He clearly gets just thrown by the pressure of being in the spotlight at tribal council. And so, I mean, I would want to go to the end with someone like that. Someone like Aubrey, who could talk her way out of a paper bag, and she's so good with her words, going up against someone like Tai, who just gets flustered. And can you imagine people coming at him like Scott and Jason be like, you betrayed me? He's probably going to start crying and just, crumple like a piece of paper.
I could see that happening. And it's funny, too, because all season long, even up to this episode, the talk has been, Tai is the biggest threat to win. Like, no one can beat him at the end. No one can beat Ty. And now we're sitting here talking about maybe Ty is one of the easiest guys to beat at the end because he's.
I would rather go up against Ty than Cydney or Aubrey, maybe
Absolutely.
even Michelle, because Michelle has friends on the jury.
Yeah, I guess that's just a testament to Cydney and Aubrey's gameplay because no one seems to be saying, "Hey, let's get those two out," you know, like.
Well, who's left to say that besides Ty and Michelle? Well, I mean, see, that's the only danger of what happened last week and going against Ty's wishes, is that now he and Michelle, who were on the outs, at each other's throats, but on the outs of that core three, they can team up and use the idol somehow.
Yeah, I mean, if Joe had any game, you know, Joe could.
Got no game.
If Joe had any game, he could say, "Hey, I've been with Aubrey and Cydney this whole time, but now's the time to get him out." And he could go to Jason. He could go to Michelle. Well, maybe Michelle wouldn't even be the best one. I don't know. If Joe and Jason could pull.
I think Joe's one and only concern is fire.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else matters to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I was a little surprised that we got that scene in this episode where he's being just a total dick, you know, just horrible to be around to Aubrey and Cydney, and yet we didn't get any inkling in the scramble section that Joe was a potential block on the block. So, I mean,
why would you get rid of Joe? I think that's so stupid. Like, I understand that Cydney clearly doesn't like to be bossed around, but getting rid of Joe because of that would be absolutely idiotic. But what happened was Ty tried to boss her around. So maybe that replaced in her mind, you know, Joe bossing her around. And so she was like, wait, no, he's trying to tell me what to do so I can get him out of the game.
Yeah, but Ty was the surrogate.
She just didn't want to listen to Ty.
Right, yeah. So do you think that says something about Joe's position next week? Like, are they going to get him back for it next week, or was that just like completely pointless?
I stand by my theory that Joe's getting medevaced.
Yeah. I guess he is having a rough time and challenges and stuff. So
yeah, I think it's going to be a late medevac, maybe even Reichenbach style in the finale, where he gets medevaced right before the end.
Do you think it will be by his own volition, or they will say, "Man, you got to go. You're 70-some years old, and you're gonna die if we let you."
No, I don't think that's it. I think there's going to be an incident that
Okay.
Like he's clearly running out of steam. I mean, in one of these days, he's just going to keel over.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I think that's going to bring the medical team in, and he's going to get maybe not choppered out, but he's going to get taken out of the game. I don't know if he'll even be able to be on the jury. If he gets taken out that late and he's that old, I mean, Caleb was in the hospital for 6 days, and he's a strong young man. I mean, Joe,
Caleb pushed himself to the point of killing himself, basically. I don't think Joe's doing that.
Yeah, but I still think that your body's different when you're 71 than it is when you're 27. And if you've been doing this consistently for 30-some days, that it's not just going to you're not going to just recover overnight.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. I mean, rather than the quick and just beating your body quickly, he's slowly doing it, and it's
exactly. And I think I don't know if he'll even be able to be on the jury if he doesn't make it to the end. So it's looking like, you know, if my theory holds true, we do see another medevac and it ends up being Joe, that we're gonna have a way more interesting final tribal council than I thought we were gonna have.
Oh yes, I mean, because you're left with all the big game players. I mean, you got Aubrey, Cydney.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of like Michelle now. She's gotten to talk a little bit more, and she had to fight this week, and I respected that. She really fought at tribal council. I mean, it's kind of hard. It would have been one thing if she were fighting against like Jason, who can dish it back. You know what I mean?
But she was beating down Ty, who was kind of just like, oh, okay. But he was trying to fight back, but he was so like flustered that he just didn't know what to say.
Well, he ended up just giving up the charade and being like, yeah, well, I'm trying to vote you out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there came a point during that whole exchange that I was like, what is he even saying anymore? Did he just give up and he's revealing what's really going on in front of everyone? I mean, that seemed like what it was happening, and it seemed too idiotic a thing to do. But this is the person who outed the super idol in front of everybody. So
yeah, I think that is part of the reason we're starting to lose, our fandom for Ty, is because he's just not proving himself to be a great. He's not cut out for this game. He's not cut out for it. Not the social talk. He's not a good talker.
Nuances.
Yeah, the talking part. It's
very sweet and very endearing how he wants to play so hard. He's just not quite playing the right way. But that's a hard thing to do, for anyone.
Yeah, I know. I get that. Can we talk a little bit about Aubrey's breakdown?
If you want.
What's there to say? I mean, she had another breakdown.
I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. I mean, she was clearly, understandably torn between which side to choose, because Cydney wanted to go one way and Ty wanted to go the other way. Cydney is who she's been working with since the Nick vote, and she promised Ty that she would back him up if he came with them, and he did. And so she feels very strong loyalty to both these people because they both flipped for her, basically, or at least to work with her. So, and they both want two different things. So it's like, she said it. It's like Sophie's Choice. You have to choose between two of your children, basically. Like they were her alliance.
Yeah. I just couldn't help but get like pangs or memories of that first episode. It kind of reminded me of her breakdown in that episode, because you had kind of forgotten about that. You had forgotten about that side of Aubrey, because she in that episode it was really bad. You were like, I think she just lost her marbles on day 2. Like she sounded crazy. And it reminded me a little bit of that. She sort of said basically she said this day has been rough. It was a rough day for her, and I think she was having one of those moments again. But it looks like she powered through, and I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, it was the first time in a while where she probably seemed very unsettled about how things were going to go. And for overthinkers, that can be, incredibly stressful. And she also said that she was starting to feel the effects of not eating and all that. That was starting to get to her again, too. So I think, it might have been a little bit of a repeat of that. I don't think she's in any danger, though, of having a more serious breakdown. I think it was just, the wear and tear of the game. It eventually gets to everybody, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, the decision was ultimately what the biggest stressor in the scenario was the decision.
Lord knows I don't like making decisions. I don't know how I would feel about making a decision like that with no food when I'm hot. I would be crying too.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yup.
So, what else? What else you got?
Pretty good challenges tonight for once. There were some cool challenges, I thought.
Yeah, I liked the immunity challenge. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say something.
Oh, go ahead.
Cydney won that immunity challenge, correct?
Yes.
And they made it look all slow and steady, wins the race. But when she was almost done the first time, her blocks dropped and she had to start over. They didn't show that.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, so they just completely cut that out?
Because it took her so long, and everybody else kept dropping too. So
they just dropped so many times.
Did it twice basically, and still won.
Yeah,
at that pace.
She just went the slowest and took her time, and that probably proved to be the best strategy. Maybe if everyone else would have gone a little bit slower, they might have won that. And Joe was really funny in that challenge. He's like,
it was funny in the reward challenge too, when he was like, "You dumb ball."
Yeah, he's like, he couldn't spell immunity. That was the best part. He just like kept spelling it wrong. He's like, "Are you serious? I have the wrong letter again." And then when Jeff was like, it's not funny. It's not gonna be funny at Tribal tonight. I was like, uh-oh, maybe Joe is going home tonight. Maybe that's a nice little setup.
I was thinking in my head, I was like, for anyone else, that might be a 6 burn probes, but Joe doesn't give a shit about Tribal Council. What does he do? Does he ever even talk at Tribal Council? I don't even know.
I've only heard him talk at Tribal like a couple times, and it was back when it was just the Brains tribe, and he was like commenting on Peter and Liz. So. Yeah, it was the Peter and Liz votes. I think he talked. And other than that, he hasn't said a word at Tribal.
I don't think so. At least not that they have shown.
Yeah, but still, it was funny. I give him props. And can we just say, maybe I did say this last week or the week before, but Joe is 73? 73?
71, I think, when he was out there.
So, I mean, give him props. I mean, he's still there. He's 73.
73. No, he's not. He's 71.
Okay, whatever. Can you imagine, though? Can you imagine?
No, I can't imagine doing it now.
Exactly, yeah. So, props. Props to Joe.
Mad respect.
Yeah. But he's not so good at holding back the fire anger,
Don't mess with his fire.
Yeah. Or mess with his fire if he wants you to. If he tells you to mess with it.
But only doing exactly the right thing he wants you to do. If you do anything else, then he'll snap your little head off.
Yeah. He doesn't seem like your typical older man, but that he really fit the stereotype in that scene.
Yeah.
Like just snappy and cantankerous, like it's the only piece that's there. What other piece, just like.
I love Cydney's face too. She was like trying not to lose her mind.
And you could see it on Aubrey's face too. It was great.
This is what I love about Cydney, is that but to us, she talks about how freaking annoyed she gets with people like Joe and Ty, and she doesn't exhibit that, though, to people's faces. Like, we've had contestants in the past who have not been able to contain that, and they flip out in front of everyone. Whereas Cydney, you think it's going to happen, you think a storm's a-coming, and she's worked up, but she keeps a lid on it in front of the people that she's angry at, and that, for someone who's pretty young, I mean, she's only 23 years old, I think that's I'm impressed with her ability to do that 32 days into the game. And I was very impressed with Cydney this week. This week was more of a Cydney week, I feel, than an Aubrey week. And Michelle was kind of there too.
Absolutely, yeah. She did have that one episode where she sort of like was laying in the hammock and she called out Nick in front of everybody. That was the closest she's been to sort of doing something like that. But, I mean, given that she seems like inside she's constantly boiling, she's like, ugh, but she somehow manages to hold back most of the time. I give her a lot of credit for that.
Especially when pregame she said Storm is going to be the one who causes trouble, and I've barely seen her. We saw her like one time. In confessionals we see her a little bit. But she's more just kind of snarky, and it's funny, and it's not like frightening.
Yeah. You mentioned that this was a good episode for Cydney. I remembered one part that I thought could play into Cydney's potential winner edit was when Ty wants to get out Michelle. Who do they show going around to everybody, making the rounds and getting things to go a different way? It's Cydney. Cydney goes to Joe. She's like, Ty wants Michelle. I don't want Michelle. Do you want Michelle? No, I want him gone. I'm sick of his shit. And then Cydney goes, who goes to Michelle? It's Cydney. And Cydney's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know that I'm doing what I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I can to make sure they get off your back. So
Mm-hmm.
they're framing it as Cydney's the one who's changing the vote. Michelle's not saving her own ass. Cydney's saving Michelle's ass. That's kind of the way they framed it.
And that's another thing that I've noticed as kind of a pattern with Cydney is that when she does this, when she kind of goes against what people think she's going to do, like with the Nick vote and with this vote, it starts out whereas you think she's just kind of reacting and she's being reactionary and she's being hot-headed and making a decision that's perhaps not a good idea. But when you come down to it, there's a more sound reasoning behind those decisions. Like her decision to get out Nick was because she felt on the bottom with Nick and Jason and Scott and Ty, and she wanted to be out of that. And there was sound reasoning behind the Michelle thing too. I think Cydney and Michelle have a super tight relationship that maybe Aubrey doesn't quite know about, because Cydney and Michelle seem to be in cahoots. And I think maybe it wasn't the whole Ty bossing her around thing, but it was the Ty targeting Michelle thing that she was not okay with. So she was like, no, not going to happen. So I feel like there's a lot more thought involved in her decisions than it would appear. And she tends to get it done. She got Nick out. She got Jason out.
Yeah, and somehow no one ever seems to think it was her fault or she's the flipper flopper twisted.
Well, except for Scott and Jason when she.
Wait. That's an obvious flop. I mean, from your original Bronze Tribe and going against them, there's no way around that. But I mean, who wouldn't? Based on the edit we've seen of Scott and Jason, who wouldn't go against those guys? You know, you'd be like, I'm teamed up with the villains right now, and I don't want to be. There's some cool girls over here I like better, you know?
Yeah.
So she flipped at the right time with the right people.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens to her eventually, or, you know, ultimately, I mean. But yeah, Cydney, she's still rocking it. She's still looking good as a potential winner, for sure.
And one thing I thought maybe if they're doing a winner's edit thing, and this was just a cute little wink to it, I think it was at Tribal Council where Jason said something. I don't even remember what he said. He was like, the blocks didn't stay for any of us. They just stayed for her. And I was like, oh, is that going to come back? Is that a thing? Is that a metaphor?
Yeah, it could
Probably
be.
not, but
maybe. You never know.
I want Cydney to win. I want Aubrey to win too. I'm not really okay with Michelle winning. I know everyone's saying that, but when you have Cydney and Aubrey there, I'd be kind of bummed if Michelle won, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, wait. What scenario? Like, what final scenario are we looking at?
Any scenario.
Any scenario where Michelle wins is not satisfactory when you have Aubrey
or
and Michelle.
Ty. I mean, I guess I can see Ty actually made more moves. It would seem not. I don't know how smart they were, but I don't know how I would feel about a Michelle win.
Yeah, I don't know either. At this point, I don't think it'd be super, great, but I could live with it.
I suppose.
I feel like a Joe win is that would be.
There's no universe in which that happens.
I mean, what if
he's getting medevaced?
What if there's enough people on the jury that are bitter?
Against who?
Against against everyone but Joe.
No, I think there's people bitter towards Joe. Jason clearly is. And you think Jason doesn't have some sway with Scott and maybe some other people? Yeah,
that's a really good point. Not to mention, do you ever think the old person thing plays into it when you're thinking about who you should give the money to? Like,
no, they need it more than anyone, I would think.
Well, yeah, but maybe give it to someone younger who can use it more.
Joe could live to be 90 years old and probably will, considering the kind of health he's in.
That's true.
He will need his Social Security is going to run out, and he's going to need to buy a nursing home place.
And the cost of living. The cost of living these days. I mean, you could spend $1 million so fast just trying to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That was just a thought I had. I wonder if anyone else had that thought, or if I'm just.
I would certainly hope not. That would be ageist. But then they said the same thing about, I don't want to give $1 million to an 18-year-old. That's ageist too. So
yeah, well, but to me, I get that. It's like an 18-year-old, they just don't have the wisdom yet, to know how to spend it properly. They're just gonna
like
party
I would
it
like
off.
to think if I got $1 million when I was 18, that I would not take out student loans and just take care of it with my own money, and B, make some kind of investments. But what kind of 18-year-old? That doesn't sound sexy. I'm gonna invest my money.
When I was 18, I would have blown all of it so fast. It would have been gone.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah,
but Julia was a smart 18-year-old. I don't think she would have done it.
Yeah, she's different, but
yeah.
Still, I don't even think that's why the jury doesn't want to give the money to younger players. I think it's because it's more of an ego thing. They're like, I have a tough time giving this money to someone who, less mature, in my own mind, less mature, less, whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah.
I have an Aubrey quote here, and I want to know if it came to fruition at all. Mm-hmm. She says, I think Tribal's going to be alive, and I think I might be someone waking it up. Did that happen?
She was half right. It was Michelle really that woke it up, I thought.
Oh, yeah, you had Aubrey maybe making a couple comments in Tribal, but I don't think it was her waking it up.
And also, I don't know how alive it was. It seemed to me we had a lot of alive tribal councils at the beginning of the season where people changed their votes during tribal council. But I feel like this decision actually had been made before they went.
Yeah, I'm sure it had.
Because everything they talked about it's like they were acting like Jason was already gone. Really. I mean, they were having a family squabble, and then they just dealt with the business of getting rid of Jason. Yeah. I think Michelle maybe was worried a little bit, but I don't think it was a live tribal council like the ones we've seen earlier this season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is kind of a weird episode where you have a lot of stuff that doesn't seem to, like, jive in the edit, where it's sort of like, you think you're getting the usual Survivor setting you up for this, it's telling this story, but this episode was a lot of like, well, that didn't amount to anything, and that was nothing, and you know what I mean?
I feel like the editors, there's so much talk about winners edit and stuff that maybe the editors are now just trying to mess with us as much as they can. Yeah, it seemed like it was kind of a farewell episode to Jason, and that he got to play with the animals and talk about his kids and talk a little bit, but it was almost like he was already gone.
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't think that's something the editors are trying to do consistently all the time. I think it's just like every once in a while they're like, hey, this is a chance to throw together a kind of crazy edit, it doesn't, there's nothing predictable about it. It's just like random crap, and then boom, the predictable thing happened, but the way you got there wasn't, the usual storytelling.
Yeah, avenue. That makes me think in my head that this vote was so, like, obvious to producers out there. Like, I have seen some behind-the-scenes stuff or read an exit interview with Jason that said basically people were instructed not even to talk to him. And
people were instructed not to talk to him?
Yeah, because he was a good talker, and they didn't want him getting in anyone's heads. Well, and so they just didn't talk to him for the last 3 days.
Who has the power to tell?
I don't know who instructed, but it was basically consensus amongst the group that they just weren't going to talk. It was consensus.
Okay. I thought you meant like there was someone saying to someone else, like, don't talk to Jason.
I'm sure it was an agreement amongst them that they just shouldn't talk to Jason because he could be persuasive.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time something like that's happened. I'm pretty sure Boston Rob used to do that,
he had a buddy system.
He was like, no, you can't talk to anybody. Yeah. You cannot talk to that tribe. Like you cannot interact with them. And they listened to him, and they just voted them all off. Yep. So it's been done.
It's done.
It's kind of stupid and not very entertaining, but
see, to me, it sounds like it was so obvious where the votes were going during this round, this tribal council, that maybe the editors just had to come up with something crazy to make it interesting. But then you're like, he had to have been so out of the loop then if he was pushing for Michelle enough to put his extra vote on her, you know?
Ty must have been out of the loop. Yeah, I mean, because if you're right, because he used the advantage, meaning that he assumed that somebody was with him. And that means Aubrey probably to some extent was telling him, "Yeah, I'm with that plan." She was basically lying to him.
Yeah.
Unless she did say right before tribal that this is a game time decision. I'm going to decide when I get there. Maybe that is the case. Maybe she hadn't made up her mind really yet, and so when letting Ty believe that she was voting with him wasn't a lie. She just didn't know what she was going to do yet.
But she and Joe did vote together, so.
So if Joe knew, but I mean, we've seen at tribals that a lot of times there's a lot of the tribal interaction going on, looking at each other.
Yeah, but then they would have shown that, and it would have been more of an alive tribal council like we were just talking about, and I don't think it was.
That's true. Yeah, it's tough to say with that quote.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. But yeah, Jason went home. That's what happened.
Just like we thought.
Yeah, well, like you thought. I have to say, I think this might be my worst season for predictions yet. I'm pretty much wrong.
It's kind of unpredictable, except for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I will take solace in that. It's been a overall unpredictable season. So it's
been a wacky season. I loved it. It's just weird, but good.
Can't say it enough how great a season it's been. I mean, it's such a pleasant surprise when you go from. I remember how little faith we had in this season when we saw I think this was when we just heard about, Beast Mode Cowboy, not a big fan of his.
Another basketball player.
You just saw these little things and you're like, this can't be good. Jeff isn't hyping it up. And then, but then when you finally got to see the cast, you started to warm up to it a little bit, but once the first episode hit, you could tell, hey, this might be decent. I like these characters.
Yeah.
So it's been
a very enjoyable season. I mean, the last couple of weeks have kind of been a little predictable, but we kind of saw that coming. From here on out, I don't know what's going to happen. So now that Julie and Jason are gone, I feel like it could go a lot of ways.
So who's the biggest target in the eyes of the players that are still there? There's 5 left?
Yeah.
So you got Cydney, Aubrey, Michelle, Ty, and Joe. So who can the group be like, okay, that's the big threat to win? Are they still thinking Ty? I tend to say no after last night's tribal.
I wouldn't be surprised if they put some votes on him and tried to get him to play the idol. I mean, but this is his last chance to play the idol. He has to play it. So they should just assume it's going to get played and maybe try to get him out.
Well, you got to go for someone else.
Yeah, but if they go for Michelle and they see that Michelle and Ty are working together, then he could give it to Michelle.
He could. He's got to play it anyways. Yeah.
He's got to play it on someone.
Yeah. So, crap. I don't know. You almost got to eat up Joe, Aubrey, or Cydney. I don't know. This is looking like it could be a Joe vote then, because Aubrey and Cydney are like, hey, Michelle and Ty are getting tight. What if he does play the idol on her? Okay, safe bet. Joe, safe bet, easy vote.
I wouldn't be surprised next week if Cydney or Aubrey went out.
Really, you think everybody will turn?
I don't want it to happen, but I think they're going to maybe start looking at them as threats, Michelle and Ty, and maybe they can recruit either Cydney or Aubrey to get the other one out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that either. But I'm kind of liking that thing I just said. I think that could definitely happen too, where they decide to go for Joe. Aubrey and Cydney just basically say, hey, let's just put it on Joe. Kind of the way very similar to the way they did with Debbie, which would be.
Think so?
Yeah, which would be super fitting because, Debbie and Joe kind of fell into the same camp since episode 1.
I'm telling you, Joe's getting medevaced. That's just.
Yeah, I mean, that could happen too. Either way, Joe is probably going home this week.
I don't think this week. I think he's getting voted out, or I think he's getting medevaced in the finale.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
Like Eric the ice cream guy's style.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. Well, you're the one who's been right pretty consistently all season, so you're probably right. But I'll say Joe. Anyways.
Okay. Well, for next week, I guess I'm going to say Aubrey.
Oh, that makes me sad.
Yeah, me too. I don't want it to be Aubrey, but I just feel like if it's going to be Cydney or Aubrey, I feel like Cydney is more likely. Although she was more anti-Ty, so maybe Cydney. Yeah. I don't know. One of the two.
But Ty could be butthurt about the Aubrey's betrayal.
Yeah.
If you can really call it a betrayal, but
that's true.
Perceived betrayal. So
yeah.
So he could turn on her. What did the previous show again? I can't remember.
The previous show, Michelle and Ty teaming up, seemingly, which probably means that one of those two is going home. Yeah. Because the previews tend to show you, I mean, they don't phone it in that hard,
Yeah, well, it varies. It really does vary. I mean, sometimes the previews will just be like, this is what's happening next week. And that's what actually happens. But I'd say more often than not, though, I'd say they go the opposite. Or, yeah, the previews are misleading, trying to get you to think one thing.
Yeah, it just seems so obvious in the preview. Michelle's like, who would have ever thought that me and Ty would work together? And it's like so, it can't be that simple. I don't think it's going to be that simple. And someone can win immunity, too. Aubrey could win immunity. Cydney could win immunity.
Maybe they both win immunity.
I don't think that's a thing.
They've never done that before where it's like, today, 2 people can win immunity. But usually
they've done it when there's like 12 people, when they merge.
Usually it's like men and women, too. It's like one man and one woman. It's never like, today, 2 men or 2 women can win immunity.
Yeah, they don't do it when there's only 5 people left in the game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, anything else?
Only one person's going to get it.
Yeah, probably. Probably, I'd say that's you could bet the house, bet the farm on that one. Probably just one person.
Probably just the one person, yeah.
So I'm glad we got to the bottom of that one because that was a mystery. All right. Well, anything else you want to add on this?
No. I'm excited I'm excited to see where it's going to go now that the 2 obvious people are gone. So should be interesting.
Still got Joe. If we can get Joe out of there, things will get really interesting.
Joe's leaving on a chopper.
I know. If he could go this week, man, it would make for a killer finale. That's for sure.
Yeah. I hope the final 3 is Michelle, Cydney, and Aubrey. That would be great.
Oh, man. Be killer. Even if Ty's in the mix, I mean, that's still pretty solid.
I honestly think Joe won't be in the mix, and they're going to have to do something weird to compensate for that jury-wise. I don't know. Maybe that's why it's a final 2. Maybe they were planning on a final 3, and then something happens, another medevac, and they're like, oh, shit, we better just do a final 2.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I could almost see a problem with the 3 girls being the final 3 and then it's a final 2. Because then you might have this there isn't much, since they all seem to like each other so much, there's not as much of a cutthroat play going on. It's more of just let's figure it out. Whatever you decide to do, I guess, is okay. And then
but that happens all the time.
Yeah, I suppose it does. I suppose that's just the nature of when you're down to 3 people, and it.
Yeah. I mean, last season, Spencer and Tasha and Jeremy were like, "Okay, let's go," and we were all like, "You guys are idiots for going to the end with Jeremy." I mean, you're just walking to Final Tribal Council to give him the money.
Yeah, so dumb. So dumb. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Jeremy and all, but damn.
Oh, yeah, very deserving winner, but still.
Stupid.
The fact that he got that far, almost uncontested, other than that wonky tribal council, is still mind-boggling to me, considering he was playing with supposedly the most strategically, sound players.
Yeah. And it's funny, too, because going into the season, Spencer and Tasha are like, if we would have loved to see them in the finals. We're like, those two, either one of those two, hands down the winner. If they go to the end. But then it just shows you how much things can change over the course of a season. By the end of the season, you're so underwhelmed by Spencer and Tasha. You're like, ugh, they're not even that great.
Yeah, this week on the Know-It-Alls, Rob was like, oh, he was just talking about how great the season's been, because he says that every week. And then Steven's like, I don't know if it was as good as last season. And I'm like,
oh, no. I hands down put
dude,
Kaoh Rong.
You were on last season. You can't even really have a legitimate opinion on the matter.
No,
so,
but I hands down put Kaoh Rong above, like, far.
I've been thinking that since a few episodes into this season. I mean, I feel like Second Chance was just so exhausting. Like, I felt like we should have been more excited about things that were happening. Like, we had to be. Like, I felt like I had to get worked up.
I was excited. I think when Varner left, that's when things got, like, boring.
That's true. Maybe if Varner had stayed.
Oh, if Varner would have won,
that would have been amazing.
Ever. Best season ever. But he would have had to win playing the way he played the first 4 or 5 episodes, or however long the last.
Yeah.
He would have had to win
with
that hectic, crazy style. Yeah, which would have been hard, but then that would have been an amazing season.
Yeah.
I saw something. I noticed something the other day that I thought was kind of funny. In our pre-finale podcast, I used for last season. I used a screenshot of Jeremy, Tasha, and Spencer talking together. So it's like I knew.
Oh yeah, we didn't know.
It's as if I knew who the final two was going to be.
Yeah, I think back on that and I'm like, oh yeah, we knew, but we didn't know there was twice that many people left. You're right.
It was a pre-finale, so
it was.
Yeah. So kind of cool. I like when stuff like that happens. Well, I think that's it. Anything else you want to add?
No, we're getting down there. 2 episodes left.
You're going to say no, but we're going to go off on another tangent. Here we go.
You ready? More tangents.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. All right. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. We will see you next week for the last episode before the finale. So really excited about this season. It's been a lot of fun.
And bonkers, but good in a good way.
You know what? If we can find time, Catie, I think it would be awesome to do a before the finale, to do looking back on this season, because it's been such an awesome season to kind of reflect on what we remember about the season. It'd be really
and what was good about it.
Yeah, mostly what's good. We'll talk a little bit about. I think there's just if we kind of go back to the beginning and think through how things have panned out, there'll be big moments that sort of pop out, and we'll just talk about those. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good to me.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye.